leftovers, or the DMV,
Number 97.
or house cleaning, or Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Summoner's War Sky Arena, one of the most popular mobile turn-based RPGs of all time, is celebrating its 9th anniversary. Download Summoner's War Sky Arena today and receive up to 100 free 9th anniversary scrolls and 1 free 5-star monster. Summoner's War Sky Arena allows you to summon and collect more than 1,400 monsters as you build and customize your team. It's free to play. Download Summoner's War Sky Arena on your mobile device.
I'm Amber Ruffin.
And I'm her gorgeous sister, Lacey Lamar.
Okay, fun fact, Lacey is not that gorgeous.
Amber, get on with it.
Okay, everybody, we have exciting news to share. We're teaming up with Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network to bring you our brand new podcast called The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show.
We did it. We sold a bunch of books, we conquered late night, and now we'll play fun quizzes and games with friends and take you along for the ride. Listen to The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi there, I'm Zach Braff.
And I'm Donald Faison.
We're real-life best friends, but we met playing fake-life best friends, Turk and JD, on the sitcom Scrubs.
20 years later, we've decided to rewatch the series one episode at a time and put our memories into a podcast you can listen to at home.
We're going to get all our special guest friends like Sarah Chalk, John C. McGinley, Neil Flynn, Judy Reyes.
Show creator Bill Lawrence, editors, writers, and even prop masters will tell us about what inspired the series and how we became a family.
You can listen to the podcast Fake Doctors, Real Friends with Zach and Donald on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network.
Hey, before the show begins, I have to tell you about this amazing new app, but you guys may already know about it, YouTube Music. They combine everything that you would expect from a streaming service with the magic of YouTube to bring everything to life. With YouTube Music Premium, you'll get ad-free music that plays with the screen off or while using other apps. Get music wherever you want it, even if you're offline. Download the new YouTube Music app today and start a free 30-day trial. Then just pay $9.99 per month. Term and restrictions, of course, apply, but you don't need to be concerned about that because you'll be listening to incredible music with YouTube Music. Download that app now. It's amazing. Do it up. Now here's the show. Hello, everybody. How are you doing this fine afternoon or evening or morning or whatever time it is that you're listening to this? I hope you're well. I'm Ray Harkins. We're hanging out on a special series of this podcast called 100 Words or Less. But this in particular is kind of like a little offshoot, an imprint record label, as it were. This show is called Be Specific. And this is an idea I've been kicking around in my head for quite some time. I'll tell you more about it and the guest in a moment, but you are into bands, right? You like band merch. You should. I love band merch. I've never even counted the amount of band shirts that I have, but I probably have over 365. So like I could wear a different shirt each day of the year, even if I dove into my archives. That might be a little too small for me, but it still works. Rockabilia.com is your place where you can stock up and build your own collection of shirts. And what's even cooler is during Halloween time, which is what we're experiencing now in October and the fall, they've got a ton of sort of Halloween theme merch and costumes and masks from like Ghost, Iron Maiden, Misfits, Queen, Rob Zombie, you name it, they got it. And they also have, some bands that are Halloween themed, as it were, like, King Diamond, Misfits, Motionless in White. You get the deal. So go to rockabilia.com and use the code PCJabberjaw. That will give you a 15% discount, and you can order to your heart's content. It will ship to you fast. It will ship to you with friendly customer service. It will ship to you as an independent business, because that's what it is. I love the company so much. They're just great human beings. They are a professional company, and they have so many options for you to buy band merch, okay? Rockabilia.com, PCJabberjaw, the only place that you should be doing that, okay? Okay, good. But what am I here to tell you about is this idea of the show. So you listen to a lot of podcasts, I'm guessing. I do too. I listen to, probably an inordinate amount. I would say 80% of my listening audio time is consumed with either audiobooks or podcasts, and the other 20% is records. And so, I understand it's an imbalance, but, that's just the way that life is. I am not listening to 80% music and 20% podcasts, but that's neither here nor there. But I listen to a lot of music-based podcasts, and I think the thing that I have been craving myself is, when people are talking about like sort of the music industry and the music business as a whole, a lot of the times people aren't specific. And, I'm not talking about like specific as far as like, being mean to people or like, like outing, certain bands that are, not as cool as other bands or whatever. Like, I'm not looking for drama per se. I'm just looking for like actual numbers, because like people are scared to talk about numbers and like money. Like, things get weird when you kind of combine that and art and commerce and like how those things meet. And so I've had this idea kicking around in my head for a while, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to approach some friends who I trust and who I know will speak candidly to me about their experiences in the music industry. And that is exactly how this came together. So all during the month of October, I'm sharing you these conversations that are a little bit different than what you typically would hear on the, kind of quote unquote regular episode of 100 Words or Less. This is more directional. This is like speaking specifically about, whether it's tours, whether it's about like management of bands, whether it's like working at record labels. And it's not just being like, oh, how do you put out records, or like, the sort of generic kind of conversations you may have. These are definitely just like getting into the weeds in a way, and like not get into the weeds where you like, if you don't care about the music industry, you'll be lost. It's like, oh wow, I didn't know that a band got paid this much money to do a show or something like that. So I just think that information should be shared, freely. There should be transparency in that. Like, I don't think that there should be any misgivings on the idea that people make money off of independent music. That is a reality. Whether you're working at a record label and you're not making, hundreds of thousands of dollars in independent music. Some people do, but that's not the common experience. So I just want to kind of, get that information out there and like get people comfortable about talking with that sort of stuff, because I think a lot of people are really cagey, and I just don't, I've never understood that. Like, if someone directly asks me, and as long as it's an appropriate context, I will share pretty much any information that people ask me, like I'm not going to broadcast that publicly across the board, like unequivocally. But anyways, let me bring us back. The guest is Shane Told. Shane is the lead singer of a band called Silverstein. He is also the host of an amazing podcast called Lead Singer Syndrome. I've been a guest on it, and he does a very similar thing to what 100 Words is doing, except he focuses on lead singers, and he has very fun conversations on that. I really enjoy his show. So I thought of Shane kind of immediately, because I was like, well, he's been doing this for a while, and Silverstein is such an anomaly within the context of independent music, because they have, ridden through the trends. They have sonically changed over time, but not like changed to the point of where you don't even recognize the band. It's like, no, they've just kind of morphed and evolved as, adults do when they're writing music together. But Shane was just a person that popped in my mind right away, because he, he's interested in the business side of things and has been navigating his band through that. And, all the rest of his members have been doing the same. So I was like, you know what? I want to talk to Shane about the business of being in a band. Like what that looks like when things, start to get real, when like the band all of a sudden is making, $1,000 a night on a tour. And you have to think about like, we talk about sharing stories of like, oh yeah, like what do you do when you have this much cash on you and you're just rolling around in a van? Like it's crazy, but that happens all the time. So anyways, we get really specific, and he shares a lot of cool insights and stories about the band's life that I think even if you hate Silverstein, you will learn something from this. Okay. Anyways, long preamble, but I just wanted to kind of set the tone for the rest of the episodes. But thank you very much, Shane. I really appreciate it. It was fun to do this with you. And now here is Be Specific, okay? And I'll talk to you after the episode is over. Set up the next episode. That's what we do here, okay?
I think I'm a good person to have, as a part of this, because I really don't care, anyways. I'll tell anyone anything. Like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
What am I trying to hide,
Well, you'd be surprised, because I think it's, no, you wouldn't be surprised. You understand. But like, there are certain people where it's like, and not like I went at a ton of people and they were like, no, I don't want to talk about that. But like, cause you like myself, like, you got a good idea of what people would be good for something like this. But, there are just some people that are just, anytime you talk about finances or anything like that, people just get weird. They feel like they like have some informational advantage over people or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. But it's funny when you talk about these specific numbers, and I kind of smile to myself because I think of specific things. Like, I remember, it's always tough when you're a new band on the road and you go out on a tour for a long period of time, and you add up the money at the end and you go, like, we made way less than minimum wage per person for how long we were out here on the road, like way less money. Like, I could have been a paper boy at home and made way more bank, and I love that. And I remember the first time Silverstein ever made money, we'd done a tour with From Honor to Ashes, and it was like kind of our first big support we ever got. Mm-hmm. And I think we were second of 5, and that led in right into another tour with Strike Anywhere, which was a band we all loved so much.
That was
just the best people.
Yeah, to interrupt your train of thought, that was actually where I first met. Like, because I mean, I knew of you guys by that point, but like when you played Chain Reaction with Strike Anywhere, that's where Bill came up to me and was like, "Dude, you're Ray from Taken," and then I was like, "I really, yeah." And so that was kind of how I first. That's how basically I got brought into your guys' orbit, where I was like, "Oh yeah, not only these dudes like fans of Taken or whatever, like I knew that, but like I didn't know you guys as individuals." But yeah, that's so funny. I love that.
Yeah, but I remember, so we'd been touring for pretty much, it'd been over a year and hadn't made a dime, And I remember it was the end of the tour, and and I counted up all the money, and we had $7,000. I remember that number because I left it in a hotel room. That's how I remember that was the number. In a silver briefcase that we used to carry around. I don't know why we thought that was a good idea. Like, I think we thought we were cool, carrying around in something that obviously looked like a briefcase full of money. But I left it in a Motel 6. I'm just going to say it was in Dallas. It was a major city somewhere in the South. And I remember, this was before there was like any kind of cell phones. We didn't have anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know. I knew I left it. Like, you have that realization where you're like, "Oh my God, where's the briefcase? Did you grab it? No." And I'm like, "It's under the bed in the hotel room." Oh my God! And we've already been driving for, I don't know, like an hour and a half probably. But the thing is the night before, we just driven and grabbed like any Motel 6 that we saw, because they were all like whatever, like $49. So I couldn't remember which one. So we had a Motel 6 directory in our van, which had like there's probably 1,500 Motel 6s in America. So I had to go through Dallas and all the suburbs and call each one. And then finally, like a bunch of them were like, "What? Briefcase? What? Band?" And then after probably like the 6th or 7th one I called, the people were like, "Yep, we got it." Like, "Okay, we're coming back." And I walked in, and it's kind of good that we had a briefcase that locked, because at least they didn't know that it was $7,000 in there. Because if we put it in just like a gym bag or something,
right, they could easily open.
So so there you go. That's always the bittersweet nature of what I do and have done for 15 years is oh, look, something good happened. Oh, something terrible happened directly afterwards.
Dude, that's amazing. I love, you saying that really triggers the idea of like, once you started to like actually have cold hard cash in your van, and then you had to you had to figure out ways to like, either depositing it at a bank or like figuring out the logistics of like how you can take care of that money. Cause like, you're a child, you don't have any real idea of like what to do with that money. So it makes sense where you're like, yeah, I'm going to put that in a silver briefcase.
Yeah. We used to do this thing where every time we had $1,000 that I guess we like above our float, we would take the $1,000 and put it in an envelope and seal it. And then that was our way of depositing it in some weird way. I guess we knew that nobody could like, either go in and just be like, hey, I need, $10 for an energy drink or something ridiculous. It was like, that's our way of putting it away. But it was so stupid because obviously we didn't, I don't know. It was so ridiculous that was our mentality. But the other thing was we're Canadian. So when we're on a tour for 6 weeks in America, like none of us have bank accounts. And we didn't have the savviness to figure out how to get an American bank account. And post 9/11, they were worried about terrorism and all that stuff. And you couldn't just send money across the border anymore. And you still can't. Mm-hmm. It's still a problem, to be honest. So yeah, that is, that's a real thing that happened. Carrying around a lot of money anyone could smash it if they knew what was in there. Be very easy just to smash the window and open the door and be like, jackpot,
Totally. Just a couple grand from like, some dumb late teens, early 20s kids just, trying to sell merch and, making $150 a show. Where it's like, especially too, when you're taking all of these things as far as like, merch and like, essentially it's all on credit. Like, you have to pay that back once you return. And, right. That sort of money where it's like, the squirreling away of $1,000 in each envelope, that is a way to, obviously signify like, we can't touch that because that is like, that's really not even our money because we have to pay, booking agent management, all that other stuff. Like that's not even real money. That's just money that goes out immediately.
No, totally. And we've always been a band that's been aware of that. We've always paid our debts on time and, that stuff's we've always been really good about that. But I mean, we've also, it also took us only a year to be able to start being like, holy shit, we're actually making money. Whereas a lot of bands sort of years and years and years go by and they get home and they say, I made $15 a day for the last, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And it's like, great. Now what? Okay. I eat Taco Bell on the road. I'm going to eat Taco Bell at home because that's all I can afford.
Totally. Yeah. It is especially crushing when you do, like you said, kind of parse it out in your head of the time invested versus time earned. And like, I so distinctly remember myself when I was going through, when I did that Sound and Fury festival for a couple of years, it was one of those things where, at the end of it, there was this lump sum money where it's like, whatever, 10 grand, 15 grand, whatever it was. But then, I'm dividing that with another partner. And then I'm also dividing it, like you said, if you're looking at the time spent on it, like, I mean, it not only is it below minimum wage, but you're just like, yeah, I think it's literally like $1 an hour, like it just doesn't.
Probably.
Yeah. But for you guys, like when, as you started to kind of, come up and start to have those moments of, like you were saying, the From Ashes and Strike Anywhere tours, like as you started to, like come home with actual cash, like, do you remember any more of those sort of anecdotal moments of like, oh, wow, like, this is either the highest sort of guarantee that we were getting, not even really maybe on like a headlining run or something like that, but something where it was like, it felt like not only from a, kid showing up at the show perspective, but a business perspective that it really felt like, oh, geez, I didn't think that we're here, but I guess we are here.
Totally. I have so many, interesting stories and things I think about, but one of my favorite is it was beginning of 2006 and we had jumped on the Taste of Chaos tour. And this was kind of the point, this year was the year that the Deftones headlined. Mm-hmm. So they'd already done the kind of really bigger iconic ones where they had The Used and My Chemical Romance had headlined. And this was when they were, kind of just getting their stride. But, I mean, the tour wasn't going to last much longer. And, that was in arenas. So the tour had already been going on for probably 3 or 4 weeks. And we jumped on just to do the Canadian dates. and we didn't open, but we were very early on the bill. I think it was like Dredge was the opening band, and then us, and then I remember after us was like As They Lay Dying played, and Thrice, and Thursday, and Atreyu, and then Deftones. So those were the bands, and we knew some of them, but we were still, a newer band. We hadn't really gotten too much hype yet. Our second record had just gotten a little bit. So we rolled in, and the first show was in Vancouver, or somewhere on the Canadian West Coast. So, they set us up, and we had merch restrictions where we were only allowed to sell, I think, 2 or 3 shirt designs, and Deftones, had this wall of merch. So we were pretty low on the totem pole and not getting a ton of respect. So I remember that was when it hit me like, okay, people care about my band, because we were selling shirts when we were playing, because we were playing so early in the bill. We were playing, and there was a lineup of people buying our merch.
Right.
Like, that doesn't even make any sense.
No, you're like, right? why are you not watching us? We are literally playing.
Our merch guys are like, they have a 25-minute set. Like, go get in there. You can get the shirt later. What are you doing? And so, as any, industry people listening to this, and probably a lot of non-industry people listening to this know, bands have to pay what's called a merch rate. So, it's usually in a bigger venue, it could be 20, even 25%. And a lot of times with a festival, style, one merch guy, usually the headliner, will collect from all the bands, and then they'll pay the venue. And the thing about merch rate is that everyone lies about it. So unless they count every shirt that you bring in the venue, nobody actually pays what they say. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if anyone's ever spoken about that on the record, but that's true.
Yeah. If you can get around it. Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I think when you're doing something like that, whether it's something like Warped Tour or whatever, everyone's in on it together. So we never lie about our numbers when it's like, what did you do? Hey, what did you do? Oh, what did we do? Okay, we did this much. Okay, well, this is what we're going to tell the man, So the Deftones merch guy came up to our merch guy on the first day and said, hey, what did you guys sell, for the merch cut? So our merch guy says, oh, we did like 15. And he says, 15. Oh, okay, cool. Just give me $100 is fine. And our merch guy goes, okay,
right.
Gives him $100. So the next day we roll into Calgary or whatever. Same thing. People are in line buying merch. It's like crazy. We can't believe it. And and the merch, and it wasn't as big a show as Vancouver the night before. And our merch guy, same thing, comes up. The Deftones guy comes up and he goes, "Oh, what did you do?" He goes, "Oh, we did a little bit less. We did like 9." And he goes, 9? You guys look busy. Like only $900? So, no, 9,000. And he goes, "What?" We're like, "Yeah." And he's, "What did you do yesterday?" We're like, 15,000. He's like, "You did 15,000," and we had beaten Deftones in merch.
Sure.
And only paid $100 in merch rate as well. And I think that was, sorry for the long-winded story, but that was when we were like doing, upwards of 10, 15. I think in Toronto and Montreal, we did like 20,000 in merch. And it was like crazy, just having this little tiny trailer full of T-shirts, filled up to the top and having a shipment every day. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy remembering that.
And especially too, I don't think there's anything more interesting than being on a tour. And like either you're in the situation where you're in, where, you're playing with these, legendary bands and, you're selling more merch and like, maybe you're having, you're drawing younger kids to the show, and everything of why people would want a band like Silverstein on a show like that is exactly what's happening. But then on the flip side, it's also interesting when you're like, maybe you're the headliner and you're watching this other band kind of like just meteorically rise and the headliner's like, oh, we shouldn't headline it anymore. And then you try to figure out how that could possibly be switched, in the middle of a tour because this band is blowing up and like you can't even like. I remember with I was on tour with Makoto and we were on tour with Calico System, on Eulogy Records and Chiodos. And this was Chiodos like on the first, Equal Vision record. And Calico System was headlining. And it was like, we had done like 3 dates in California. And it was very much that scenario of just like, oh my God, like Chiodos is doing, like $2,000 in merch a night. And all of these children are here to see them. And Calico System is like, we cannot play last. Like there's a difference between headlining and playing last. And we are playing last right now. But like to your point of just that feeling of like, oh my gosh. And just watching that kind of swirl around feels really, really weird.
Yeah. And it wasn't, I don't think we were anywhere near, I don't want people to think that I thought we were bigger than Deftones are.
No.
Or we weren't even, drawing that many people. I just think it was that every single person, we'd never really played on the West Coast of Canada before. So every single person that came out had never seen us before, and they just wanted a fucking t-shirt to be cool, or whatever. I think that was more what it was, because we have nights we do really well in merch, but to be doing 15 to 20 every night is a lot of money. And I would love to do 15 to 20 grand a night now.
Yeah.
But I love that. And it's funny that you bring up the Chiodos thing. I forget who I had on my podcast, but somebody said that the same thing happened, and it was Panic at the Disco was playing first.
Right.
And halfway through the tour, they're all over MTV, on TRL and all that. And it's like, we got to do something, because people are not going to stick around for
us. Yeah. It's like when the plans were hatched 6 months ago, things were very different. And then now that we're in the reality, it's like, oh, we got to figure this out. Like, yes, we'll take, $1,000 less a night on our guarantee because we don't want to play in front of 4 people at the end of the night. That just feels not only wrong, but it's, it's a little sad when you're in that position and you're like, I just want to play in front of some people, capitalize on this.
Oh, totally. And my buddy, posted just yesterday, and then I'm going to pull it up because it's so good to talk about with us. And it's one of those, old, like a weekly magazine. He's from Ohio. He's from Columbus, Ohio. And, this is from 2006. I know because I remember some of these tours. And, it has the bands who was headlining and who was playing under them. And, seeing some of these ones here, like, and some of the bands that have fallen by the wayside. But here's one that goes to what I was saying. This is The Academy Is with Panic at the Disco, Acceptance, and Hello Goodbye. That was the tour that happened.
Nice.
With Panic at the Disco playing under The Academy Is. But my favorite on here is this tour is the headliner is the Veronicas with October Fall and Jonas Brothers.
Wow. So crazy.
The Jonas Brothers, and this is 06, February 11th, 06, at the Basement in Columbus, Ohio, and that was like, I didn't even know the Jonas Brothers were actually a band that did
like tours,
right? You know what I mean? Yeah,
totally. Yeah, you feel like these bands or artists that just have so much cachet because of the other things that they've done. Like, they don't need to exist in the scene and, play DIY shows. And then it's like, oh no, like some people have to do that. And it for a good reason, because otherwise they'll probably be terrible if they, play TRL as their first show.
I know. It's a wild thing.
And so, like most people, especially from like a touring perspective, you see, and I know I've seen in the past as well, a lot of bands are, irresponsibly spending on not only their own personal expenses, but then when it comes to, tour budgets, and when you're working on like, all right, how much crew are we going to take out? How, should we travel in a bus or a van, and those sort of things. How, and you guys, like you've mentioned previously, and it's evidence of you guys still existing as a band, that, you've been very frugal and have made, good moves from that perspective. Can you name an instance where you guys were really wrestling around with a certain decision in regards to a tour budget, like, oh, should we do this? Should we do that? And then kind of on the flip side, a poor decision you guys made was like, oh, we ended up doing this, and then now we ended up regretting it for one reason or another. It doesn't have to be particularly for finances per se, but
right. Well, it all comes down to finances. Everything that you do, pretty much in a band. But my favorite of all these things is is, I'm sure I know you know what it is, and most people listening to this in the industry know what a bandwagon is. And bandwagons haven't existed very long. You know, they're kind of like, for people that don't know, they're like small buses. They kind of have all the good things about a bus, like they have a shower and you have bunks and a place to sleep, but they're not super big and they're pretty bumpy and they're not the best. Buses are much better, but they're also considerably cheaper. But before bandwagons existed, you pretty much were either in a full-on bus where you got a driver you have to pay and pay overdrives and pay for their hotel and then all the fuel and everything, or you're in a van, which is you're driving yourself. There's nowhere to lay down. You know, it's a van. And those were the options. So, you know, as all bands with the, you know, veteran bands like Silverstein, they go through ups and downs. And I guess can be proud to say we haven't done a van tour since 2005. We've either done buses or bandwagons since then. But we got to a point where we sort of realized that we were going to do a bus tour and we weren't going to make any fucking money, you know, because we were supporting, I don't remember who it was.
Sure.
Are you there, Ray?
I am.
I'm sorry, you are there. You were so quiet. It was like, am I talking to myself for 5 minutes?
No.
And so we ran the budgets and we were with this company called Northern Gold. They were a small bus company and they're great people. And they only had 3 or 4 buses, as I recall. But what we liked about them is they used to make us bread and soup every morning. The driver would wake up and make bread and soup in the morning. It was great.
That's amazing.
So we ran the budgets, and it was like, oh, man, like, do we really want to go back to a van? Because you get to a certain level of comfort, and it's hard to go back. And this was 2010. And what's the point of this whole story is, Silverstein was actually the first band ever to be on a bandwagon. We were the first band because this company, Northern Gold, turned into Bandwagon. And I'll never forget the email I got from Paul that said, it was subject line.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Trust me in saying that therapy is an incredible tool for as you are traveling through life, because who you are as a person, 5 or 10 years ago is maybe a completely different version of yourself, because we run into challenges, whether it's work, whether it's life stuff, relationships, all of those things you can work through with a therapist. And that is why I love BetterHelp and what they do. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and it's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, and then you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Ray. Dip in, give therapy a try, and become a better person.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Weird bus. And it was a bandwagon, and it looked pretty much the same as they look now. And we said, okay, well, I don't know. Let's give this a shot. So this company we were the guinea pigs for the first ever bandwagon, and that would have been in 2010. And
that's amazing.
Yeah. So and it's funny because we've still taken those things out and for years and years and years, and they are pretty solid. And I wish we got the grandfathered in rate from 2010. We do not, but yeah, there's another interesting tidbit. We're the first band to be on a bandwagon.
Oh, yes. Our good friends Casper are here to tell you about how awesome their mattress is. But no, that's not their job. That's my job, because I legit love my Casper. Now, what are they? It is a sleep brand that continues to revolutionize its line of products to create an exceptionally comfortable sleep experience one night at a time. So they have 3 models: the original Casper, which is what I have, the Wave, and the Essential. Their mattresses are perfectly designed to soothe and cradle your natural geometry. Not to mention, super breathable design, helps you sleep cool, regulates your body temperature throughout the night, and is delivered to your door in a small, how do they even fit that in there, sized box. Free shipping and returns in the US and Canada. The best part is that you can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free sleep on it trial. After all, you spend 1/3 of your life sleeping, so you should be comfortable. I love my Casper. I've loved my Casper ever since I've got it. I sleep so soundly on it. My wife sleeps soundly on it. Anytime my son sneaks into the bed with us, he sleeps soundly. But real talk, Casper is the best. Anytime anybody asks me about my mattress experience, I'm like, that you don't even need to look in any other direction besides Casper. So get $50 towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/words and using words at checkout. That's casper.com/words, offer code words, and I will give you $50 off your first mattress purchase. Terms and conditions, of course, apply, but Casper is the best. Casper.com/words. I love them. They'll make you sleep better, okay? Now on with the show.
And kind of the second part of the question of like, is there a decision that you guys made that you were like, retroactively it would have been like, oh, wow, I wish we would have handled that differently? I mean, I'm sure there's obviously a lot, but, something that kind of pops out in your head.
I think anytime we've taken a support tour and then we've got there and realized we should have been headlining it, or the headlining band wasn't worth anything, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus specifically. But again, I guess the statute of limitations, as you say, I could probably at least talk about one incident.
Sure.
And this was actually right before that Taste of Chaos tour. We had taken the Take Action tour, which is funny because it's on this list I just talked about. And it was Matchbook Romance was the headlining band. And we were direct support, and also Early November was there. Amber Pacific. I remember Paramore was on a few shows, which is funny. And that was when we got there and we were playing direct support second last, and everyone was leaving after we were playing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were only getting paid like $1,000 a show or something like that. And everybody was leaving, and it was like, we were, still are friends with Matchbook Romance, and we felt bad. But what are you supposed to do? We're not going to switch places. We're like, well, okay, we'll play last, but we're going to have to switch money too,
Totally.
So that was one of those very awkward decisions. And looking back now, I think when you do that, I think every band that attains a certain level of success, that has to happen at some point in their touring career. If it doesn't happen, you're either a genius or
really lucky,
or you're probably not taking up as many opportunities as you should. So that happened to us a few times, and at the time we felt like it was a regret, and we felt like, what are we doing here? This is stupid. We should be on tour with this band or this bigger band that we get in front of their fans. What is our manager doing, or why isn't our label fighting for us? But now looking back, I think that those are necessary steps, and sometimes it's good to be that kind of underdog.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting that you bring up that tour, because I think that example is kind of a confluence of events, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was the last year the Take Action tour put something out. And, from a previous, 3 or 4 year run where it was successful, if not a little bit longer. But like, you run into those, package branded tours that, are hot for, year after year. And then eventually it hits a wall where it's like, okay, either the package doesn't make sense, and like, like you were saying, right, headliners isn't as strong, and then all of a sudden everybody has to like reevaluate and figure it out. So like that, that was just what you guys experienced, where it was like, oh yeah, like maybe just kids aren't coming to these type of shows anymore. Like,
no, it wasn't that. The kids were coming out. The shows were great. I mean, we played the House of Blues in Orlando. It's a bigger House of Blues. It was sold out. The problem was, after we played, everybody left.
Yeah, sure.
And we were like, oh great, well we're doing a headline tour basically, but only playing for 40 minutes and not getting paid nearly what we should. So that was more the issue,
Right.
But no, actually, Taste of Chaos, that was kind of, I'd say, the heyday.
No, well,
and there were many Take Actions after that. And you mean Taste of Chaos?
No. Well, you said Taste of Chaos, but I was like, Take Action. So because that was what year was that? Was that 2000?
2006.
2006. Okay, so yeah, I guess it did go for.
We ended up doing Take Action again in 2011. We co-headlined with Bayside.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I don't know how many years they ran Take Action, or I think it left for a bit, it came back, but I don't know. I don't know if the branded tour thing works anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really tough because I think that that was such a in vogue thing to do in the early 2000s and mid 2000s, and then I think people. Especially because each band and record label or whatever promotional arm to promote the tours, they're just as strong as brands, but everybody kind of viewed a brand as being like, oh well, they're going to be the one that's doing a lot of marketing for a tour beyond just us. So it's here's this other entity that will help bring people to the show. And then then when people were inventing brands out of nowhere, where it's let's just name this tour something cool and then we'll do it again. It's well, yeah, you're just making something up out of nothing, which is how most things start. But, but yeah,
no, we were also the band that they branded "Scream It Like You Mean It" around. That was our thing the first year we did, and that's coincidentally that's the first tour we had the bandwagon for. So, back in 2010. But I know what you mean.
Yeah,
and
no, that's right. I totally forgot "Scream It Like You Mean It." There's so many.
Do you remember the Cool Tour? Do you remember that?
I do remember the Cool Tour. Yeah.
What the hell branding is that? Cool Tour.
And dude, it just shook loose in my head too. They had the 10 for 10 tour where it was 10 bands for $10, and it was obviously all hardcore bands. But
yeah, that was cool.
That was cool. Yeah, and it was someone's taking a bath on it, but that's cool.
Yeah. How?
Yeah.
How would you do that? That's so much Taco Bell dollar menu is being eaten on that tour.
Well, I think it was basically probably just a bunch of sponsors underwriting it, where it's okay, this is how the bands are actually going to get paid, because they're not going to get paid from the door, that's for sure.
Right.
The last two things I wanted to kind of bring up before I let you go was the the kind of like what we were sort of dancing around earlier, where, what sort of numbers stick out in your head where, like you were saying, the sort of, whatever the $7,000 you left behind at a hotel, or, the $15,000 you guys did in merch at Taste of Chaos. Do you have any other kind of numbers if from a guarantee perspective, or something that was kind of like you said, where it was just surprising to you guys? Because, from all that I know of you as individuals, you have a healthy ego about yourselves. And I mean that where it's you can make fun of yourselves, and then you can also be oh wow, I'm so glad we're doing this, So I'm giving you that window. So it's you can humble brag about a certain thing you got, where it's oh wow, I can't believe that we got that, or we did this thing in particular.
Yeah, a few things come to mind. I think at one point early in our career, we played at the Starland Ballroom in New Jersey, and we had the highest guarantee of the tour, and it was, I think it was $17,500 was, I think, the guarantee, which, for us to do a headline show was, great and a lot of money. And I was nervous because I was that's a lot. I really don't want someone to lose their ass, for our band.
Totally.
I was nervous about it. And it's a weird, I don't know if you've ever been to Starland Ballroom. It's a weird venue because when you walk in there, you'd never be oh yeah, this is 2,500 cap room. It doesn't feel like it. It feels very small. Mm-hmm. And I remember we didn't sell the show out, but we did what I thought was really good. I think we did 1,900 tickets, which was a lot of tickets. Mm-hmm. And I remember the promoter was actually bummed out. Yeah, you only did 1,900. It's wow. Yeah, we only did 1,900. They really wanted it to be a sold out show, or and that was when I got into the point where it's fun. It's funny how the expectations can vary so much. 1,900 tickets on any day ever is great for our band, but if I don't know, pick a band. Deftones go out and there's only 1,900 people there. That might be like terrible, and there might be people losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, on any given show. So, yeah, I remember that one. That one specifically being memorable, I guess. It's funny. I think Silverstein. We haven't had
leftovers or the DMV
number 97
or house cleaning or Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hey, everybody. I'm Amber Ruffin.
And I'm her beautiful sister, Lacey Lamar.
Fun fact about Lacey, she's not as beautiful as I am. You guys, we have a brand new podcast on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network called The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show.
We are New York Times bestselling authors, and we've written 2 books on everyday racism that made you gasp and laugh at the same time.
We done did it. Mm-hmm. We sold a bunch of books. We were on Late Night with Seth Meyers and The Amber Ruffin Show. And now we only have one frontier to conquer. That's podcast.
Podcast, baby.
This quiz show is going to be fun. We're going to have celebrities. We're going to quiz them about things that they are experts at. And we'll see who wins and who loses.
You got to watch us. Ooh, no, you have to listen to us. I mean, you can still watch us, but you got to listen.
But like, if you're watching us, you have to tell us. You can't just be watching us.
Listen to the Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
As many of those real crazy ones, because we've never been the band that broke up and then came back. And when you're the band that breaks up and comes back, that's when you get the crazy money. And to be honest, that's why a lot of bands come back. I've heard of bands playing the Montebello, rock fest up in Quebec, Canada, and reforming and like having 6 figures thrown at them when the most they ever got paid when they were together was probably no more than $4,000 or $5,000, and they're getting like $100,000 to reform at a festival. So that's, to me, is the weirdest.
In a world where everyone is confined to their homes, society begins its largest bin watch to date. In the hallowed library of Hulu, or perhaps on a shelf of DVDs you haven't looked at in a decade, is a show that perfectly encapsulates life in the early aughts and launched a friendship that would inspire millions. Hi, I'm Zach Braff.
And I'm Donald Faison.
In 2001, we starred in Scrubs, a sitcom that revealed a glimpse of what it was like to survive a medical internship. As Turk and JD, we explored guy love.
Nearly 20 years later, a lot has changed. We're not Supermen, but we're still best friends. Given the mandatory lockdown, there's no better time to relive the series that brought us together in the first place. And we're doing it with a podcast.
That's right, people. We're going to bring friends and crew members and fellow cast members and writers. And guess what? We're going to even invite some of you to call into the podcast and ask all the questions you want of the entire Sacred Heart staff.
Join us for Fake Doctors, Real Friends on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.
No, totally. Especially where you're like, the band never commanded anywhere near that sort of like guarantee perspective at all, like when they existed. And of course, the nostalgia factor is a huge thing. But yeah, that notion of like, even on a smaller scale, like I know that, there are many bands like, the sort of local like pay to play scene that exists in pretty much every city. Like I knew it existed. But like, it wasn't until I, like when I started to play with Makoto, where it was like, there was a quantifiable commodity that we brought to the table. The fact that like, some people were like, oh yes, like, here's Ray from Taken's new band or whatever. And so like, people will be curious and come out or whatever. But I just remember it's like these venues would approach us, these local venues, and give us an absurd amount of money, like for a local show. It's like, hey, we'll give you guys $1,500 to play like 5 minutes down the street. And it was like, what the hell? Like, I just hadn't experienced that before. I was like, the most ticket got paid to play was like, like maybe $1,000. And that's if we're like, headlining Chain Reaction, selling it out or whatever. But I just, that notion of getting paid that much. But then once I understood the finances of it, I was like, oh, it's not like the venue is paying this. It's these bands that want to play with a quote unquote cool national headlining act, whatever pitch they have, it's like, I mean, Silverstein could 100% be the same thing where it's just like, if you guys wanted to be like, all right, you know what, like we're done really actively touring. Like, we could probably milk the Toronto scene for a good year. Not saying, but you know what I'm saying? Where it's like, people would like, oh dude, like, Silverstein, we can play with Silverstein tonight. Like, we have to sell 100 tickets to play with them or whatever.
Oh yeah. No, we haven't done too much of that. I mean, there's always, local bands jumping on a tour package. If there's a 4 or 5 band bill and then there's a local opener, the promoter stuck on there and made them sell 50 to 100 tickets. I never liked that, but it definitely does exist, and it's something that you have to kind of live with sometimes. But yeah, that's funny. No, we have an interesting scene, here in Ontario where we can do things like that, and we have in the past. Like, let's say we've been off for a little while and we're like, shit, we need to like just make some money to pay some bills. We have to pay our insurance for this year or something like funny like that. And we'll do what we call the 401 tour, because the 401 is not the 401k, but 401 is the main highway that runs through Ontario, kind of like the 5 in California. And so our 401, so we'll go and we'll play like, all right, drive like 45 minutes, drive hour and a half, play, and we'll do all these kind of like, shitty shows. And sometimes it's like, okay, well, hey, if the if the venue is selling drinks and 250 people come out, that's a lot of drinks. And, if you're talking about a $20 ticket, that's a decent amount of money coming in the door for us to drive, whatever, an hour or two from our house, do the show, go back, sleep in our own beds. I mean, that can be pretty financially sound to do that. And we have, because we're smart. Right. There you go.
Yeah. You take
right. I mean, people shake their head and go, "Oh, what? They're playing Chatham, or they're playing Waterloo, or St. Catharines. What are these places? Like, they're not playing Toronto, or they're not playing London, or these bigger cities that national bands go to. But it's like, dude, if you could go, let's say you work at a Home Depot. But you could go to Home Depot an hour away, and someone's going to give you, I don't know, $5,000. Yeah. Right. You're going to say, "Oh, I don't know, man. That's lame. That's not cool. I'm not going to do that." Come on.
Yeah, and to your point too, and I know you've experienced this, where it's like sometimes the shows in the secondary or tertiary markets are better because kids are starved for entertainment and connection. And like when you go to whatever, Wilmington, Indiana, or whatever, name some random town, it like people are that much more excited about it, because it's like, oh, what are you going to do on a Thursday night? I'm going to go to this show. It's like, who's playing? That doesn't matter. It's just, that's the thing to do,
Oh, totally. And now that I'm a Windsor, Ontario resident, I'm definitely seeing that, where I'm like, we had Broken Social Scene playing the other day here. And I'm like, that's crazy. Broken Social Scene is playing. Like, maybe I'll go. And then I'm thinking to myself, why would I? Like, I'm from Toronto. I could have seen Broken Social Scene. I think I've seen them a couple of times, but it's like, all of a sudden I'm like so excited about some band that I to be honest, don't really listen to, coming through the town, just because now I'm a part of this smaller community or music scene that's starved. Who else is coming? 3 Days Grace is coming to the casino. I'm like, oh, that's sick, 3 Days Grace. Then I'm like, wait a second, I fucking hate 3 Days Grace. Well, why do I care about this band coming? So you make a great point about that, and it's true.
Well, I think any band that experiences the touring that we have and did the first couple of years of our bands, where it's like, when you're working with people just to get shows anywhere and you just want to play in front of some people, you find that those memorable shows are in those places. It's not like, yes, you're stoked to play New York City or LA or whatever, right? But you do find that those those communities that spring up around small towns of like, oh yeah, no matter what, you're going to have 50 kids that show up to the show, in South Texas or whatever, and it's like, and those are the ones that are going to stick out in your head, where it's like, especially as you're like climbing up and trying to get people to like recognize you,
Totally, man. And that we always look forward to the small ones.
Totally.
You roll into CBGB in New York City, and you're there, and the bartender's a total asshole to you, and Saka's a prick, and the promoter doesn't even care you're there. And you guys are you're a punk band? Oh, okay, cool, whatever. You roll into Burlington, Iowa, and it's like, oh my god, you guys are a punk band? That's so cool,
right?
Like, everyone's so excited that you're there, and inevitably, sometimes in the early days, there were more people at the shows in Burlington, Iowa, just because than New York City, because there's just so much less to do, and it really is funny.
Yeah, you could in Burlington, Iowa, you could legit go to the local mall and like straight up advertise for your show, like just by simply hanging out at the mall because you looked different, and people were like, "What's up with these guys?" And like, it is so interesting how that kind of the weirdness and the you don't look like you belong here will attract people to the thing. Like, oh, are you guys a band? Are you playing? Are you playing in town tonight? Oh, cool. I'll bring some of my friends. And it's like, wow, we just were killing time before the show. So like, thanks.
It's always a funny moment too when you're at a truck stop in the middle of nowhere and someone sees the van, and you always, y'all in a band,
right?
And so we used to say we were Good Charlotte.
Perfect.
Because we knew they'd heard of Good Charlotte probably at the time, and then we'd say, Good Charlotte, yeah, I think my daughter listens to y'all, and we used to do that.
Oh, that's perfect, because the science of that is you have to think of a band that is, like you said, is large enough where they may have potentially run across them at some point, but not large enough to where people will like automatically not believe you. We'll be like, well, no, you're obviously not Pink Floyd or Metallica or whatever.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And you don't want to aim too low where you're like, oh yeah, we're Silverstein. They're like, who? You're like, damn it. Never mind.
And there's funny times too. Like I remember walking out of a I've been sleeping in the back of the van, and I walk out and I'm wearing like skinny jeans and a studded belt, and probably have some blonde streak in my hair, and I'm some tight ass shirt with like fluorescent stuff on it. And I walk out and the sun's in my eyes, and this old man says to me, "Hey, y'all on a fishing expedition?" Like, what? Look at me, dude.
Yeah.
No, we're not on a fishing expedition.
I could be furthest from a fishing expedition, my friend. If you think this is the gear for a fishing expedition, I don't know what you're talking about.
That happened. So.
Yeah. The last thing I want to hit you with was the clearly, as you have existed now, like you said, as as a full-time band for quite some time, and you've been able to afford some of the luxuries of, like you were talking about, not having to go back into a van, and you guys have been thrifty in regards to the way that you spend your money, and you're economical. But I know that you undoubtedly still encounter those sort of business decisions that, kind of leave you guys either, like 3 of the guys want it, 2 of the guys don't, or flip it. So what sort of decisions that you guys have to like really make now? Like, do you feel because of what you've experienced, you're better equipped, or do you feel like you're still just those, dumb 18-year-old kids making newer decisions that are different than what you previously made? Or is it some combo of both?
I think you got to think about, when you're headlining and stuff, that stuff's, you're going to get paid, and you're going to make money, and that's going to be fine. And if you're doing festivals and stuff, you have to make sure you're going to make it work. And if you can't make it work financially, if you're going to either make very little money or a lot less money than, let's say your own personal minimum wage that you require to pay your bills, then you have to look at what you're doing as an investment for a future, and this happens a lot with certain festivals and stuff, in Europe, especially, where one festival is like saying, hey, this is a cool hardcore festival and you can headline this and we're going to pay you a good amount of money. And then the next day you're going to play this huge festival with all these like indie rock bands and you're going to be on the hardcore stage, but you're going to get paid peanuts to be there, and you have to, work that out to where financially you can do enough of the hardcore festivals that you can get paid and make it work. But then you can also go and do some of these other festivals to hopefully, invest in the future and have more people see you and have the exposure, that you need. And the other thing is with support tours, and it's the same thing. And I remember it was last year. It's funny, I'm bringing Good Charlotte up again. We got offered a Good Charlotte tour, and it was across Canada, Canada is a really shitty place to tour because the cities are very, very far apart. And once you get to one end, well, you got to go back and there's nowhere else to play.
Yep.
So we had offered this Good Charlotte tour, and I didn't want to do it. Billy didn't want to do it. And Josh didn't care, which is typical of Josh if anybody knows him. and Paul Mark was sort of on the fence. He wanted to hear the reasons, and Paul really wanted to do it. Really wanted to do it. Thought it was a good opportunity and everything. And the money was not great. So that was probably that's the most recent thing where we had to decide. Well, hey, is getting into playing with Good Charlotte, a band that I don't think we'd have any chance to play with 10 years ago. Is that a good move for us or not? And ultimately we decided we would do the tour, even though it was going to be financially a loss, probably was a financial loss for that kind of exposure. And would we do it again? Well, I wouldn't do it again. Not that there's anything wrong with Good Charlotte. They were lovely people and we had a great time and the shows were good, but I don't think we really got anything out of playing to 30-year-olds, screaming in their faces when all they wanted to hear was "Lifestyle's the Rich and the Famous," So
yeah.
So those kinds of things. I guess this also goes to your question before about if we have any, regrets or whatever. So those kinds of things you have to wrestle with. Like, okay, is this going to make sense? And it's always great when you could do a support tour and get paid at the same time, or a support tour that makes perfect sense. But it does happen a lot where you have to say, okay, is this exposure worth, not making any money? And I think the reason we did the Good Charlotte tour was because 10 years before, or I guess more than that now, we took a tour with Simple Plan in Europe. And again, it was like not a lot of money, and it's, going to Europe. So there's all those expenses of flights and everything else that you don't have when you're just doing, for us, Canada. And that was really, really, really good for us. To this day, when we go to Europe, people say, "Oh yeah, I saw you guys. The first time I saw you guys was opening for Simple Plan, and I never knew your kind of music existed." So I think we thought that maybe that would happen again. A part of us thought that would happen with Good Charlotte and their younger fans, but it turns out that there aren't as many young Good Charlotte fans as we thought.
Sure. And honestly, like anytime you reach those fork in the road moments where, you're really hemming and hawing and having a lot of discussions about it and a lot of group texts about it and whatever.
Right.
Most of the time, the only way that you know is like when you actually walk into that door and then you have that experience and then you try to, because like if you're referencing a tour that you did 10 years ago where it was like, as a pro, where it's like, well, that kind of worked out for us, and so like maybe this can resemble that. It's like, but you really truly won't know until you walk into that door and experience it and then be like, okay, well, now that can be the anecdotal information that we use for the next 5 years or whatever.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think that's something that always, goes back. I mean, you draw on your own experiences because this podcast that we're talking about, this is as close to a handbook as you're ever going to find. This is there's nowhere you can read about what to do in these situations. No one's written a book. There's no manual. So, you trial and error and you go back and you draw on your own experiences and, every band is different. Every everybody has a different experience with this kind of stuff.
Oh, totally. And I always like it. And people, no matter how successful you are as a band or a creative person, people will always look up, especially if you're older, people always look up to what you do and be like, oh, can you give me advice? Can you tell me this thing? And you'd be like, right. Well, yeah, how about you fail miserably for a long time, suck at what you do for a long time and then accidentally trip out, most of the successes that people have in their lives aren't because they're insanely talented and thread the needle, and are super lucky. That's a rare occurrence. So it's yeah, if you were to be all right, write me a battle plan on Silverstein. And it's just no, that's impossible. I can't do that. I can offer generic advice, but that's it.
Oh, totally. And not to mention, it's funny when bands ask me specifically, hey, we're this new band and what should we do? And I say, I don't fucking know. If you ask in 2001, I knew. I'd be able to tell you what to do in 2001, 2002. Right. But now, a new artist starting out?
Yeah.
God, I wouldn't even know where to begin, man.
Totally. Yeah. It's impossible. It's this is a completely different world, a completely different context. I'm not a child anymore. I can't give you direction. I'm sorry.
It's just the music industry just changed so much. It's unbelievable now. So
yeah, for sure.
I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. And it's ever changing. And in a couple of years, it'll be even different. So you just got to try to stay on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Shane, this has been super fun. I really, I just always like
thanks,
Rick. Of course, man.
I know. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And I probably said too much, but hey, that's the point of these things.
Oh my, wasn't that a doozy? Yes, that was. I really enjoyed that. I felt it was the most appropriate episode to kind of kick this series off with. And it just kind of, sets the stage for all of the fun conversations I'll be bringing you over the course of the next month. And I promise you, one of them will be the mailbag episode that I've been promising for quite some time. So I've got some really, really good questions that I'm going to dig myself into and hopefully be able to explain some things to you and answer some questions and provide some insight and all that other fun stuff. But next week is my friend Wayne Pagini. He is a manager at Fly South, or I think it's called Entertainment. Fly South, we'll call it. But, they manage really small bands like Paramore and Day to Remember and whatever. But he will introduce himself appropriately next week. But we talk about Rammstein. And Rammstein, some of you may be like, Rammstein, why the hell are you going to talk about Rammstein? That's that old random industrial band that was popular at one point. Well, let me tell you, they're still immensely popular. And let me tell you, they're probably one of the best live shows I've ever seen in my whole entire life. And he was working when the band initially broke here in the United States of America in the mid to late 90s. And he shares wild stories because, granted, this was a much different music industry than we exist in now. But there's just so much information that he shares about what it's like to work at a record label when a record is becoming successful in ways that nobody ever imagined. So really, really fun stuff. That is next week. And until then, please be safe, everybody.
You've been listening to the Jabberjaw Podcast Network, jabberjawmedia.com. Shh.
Hi, I'm Esther Dean. I've made my life by writing songs like Fireworks by Katy Perry, Super Bass by Nicki Minaj, What's My Name by Rihanna, just to name a few. And now I'm having an absolute blast sharing some of the knowledge that I've learned with upcoming songwriters on Songland on NBC. I'm excited to welcome you to a brand new season of Songland and Songland's podcast, giving you some new insight into the magical art of songwriting, as told by some of the best in the business, and also the pioneers and the up-and-comers who will be shaping the hits you'll be listening to for years. We have an amazing roster of talent this season. I promise you don't want to miss one single episode. Don't miss Songland, Monday nights at 10, 9 Central, and join us here on Songland's podcast, available every week after the show on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Leftovers, or the DMV,
number 97,
or house cleaning, or
Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I'm Amber Ruffin. And I'm her gorgeous sister, Lacey Lamar.
Okay, fun fact, Lacey is not that gorgeous.
Amber, get on with it.
Okay, everybody, we have exciting news to share. We're teaming up with Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network to bring you our brand new podcast called The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show.
We did it. We sold a bunch of books, we conquered late night, and now we'll play fun quizzes and games with friends and take you along for the ride. Listen to The Amber and Lacey and Amber Show on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.